Please introduce yourself, sir, and we're all yours.
All right, good. My name is Nick Davis. I'm with Hazel Levine. Not with me is some of the consultants that also worked with us. Gary Weber, who did the landscape architecture. We had conservation design with stormwater management, and Gewalt Hamilton for transportation. This is going to be a very brief presentation. We're going to hit the main points of the plan. It is the entire plan, but very fast. So going in, it's broken up into 7 different sections. The first chapter is the introduction. The purpose of the introduction is just to kind of set up what we're doing, what the plan's about, what the process included, the district, as well as the TIF district and the corridor, what some of the relationships were there. It's a regional settings map. We put it within context of the region, also within context of the city. And then the corridor context and public outreach. This chapter includes a brief summary of all the input that we had gathered during the existing conditions report and some of the public outreach. It reviews the past plans and studies that we looked at. It reviewed all the existing land uses such as residential, commercial, businesses, semi-public, and gives you kind of a breakout of all the different uses where they're located on the corridor. We also looked at the regulatory controls, zoning ordinances, any of the regulations that are impacting the corridor, any of the developments along this corridor were reviewed, analyzed. We mapped everything. And then this section is a brief summary of all the different community outreach steps. We had a lot of different processes that we took, a lot of different activities. If you want to know anything about any of the topics that we had received or feedback that we had received, this section summarizes it. We talk about the key person interviews, the business workshops, the community workshop. We also did a visioning workshop after the existing conditions report. And then we had a project website that included an interactive map, as well as some online summaries and questionnaires. We were able to get as much feedback that we could from all the different viewpoints in the community. The land use plan and design guidelines, this is the first chapter where we start getting into actual recommendations or specific recommendations. And the land use plan is kind of broken up into 3 different sections when we were looking at the corridor. There's the south zone, the interchange zone, and the north zone. One of the really important factors of this plan was to unite these 3 zones. We did that through incorporating a couple of really key principles, making sure that the plan remains flexible over time as the corridor begins to develop or sees interest, and talking about conversion, some of the uses that might be incompatible. We identified some recommended land uses, and we broke them into specific categories. We talk about multifamily, commercial, commercial nodes, semi-public, open space and utility easements. And then this map, based on both the 3 different zones and the recommended uses, starts to break down a more specific guideline for future growth. Another key aspect was priority development and opportunity sites along the corridor. Some of the key strategies there were priority redevelopment at key nodes, just general redevelopment opportunities, and then also relocation of incompatible uses. This map identifies all of those different issues, as well as some specific descriptions about what could happen on key sites along the corridor, both catalyst sites and also redevelopment sites. We also addressed some of the on-site and facade improvement enhancements that need to happen over time. A lot of things that can be done very quickly. And then the design guidelines, won't go into this, it's very specific, but it's broken out into categories such as building placement and orientation, how you site it, what types of materials, the types of signs, lighting, universal design, parking lots, streetscape, landscape, even types of development. So that made up the land use and development chapter. This is the transportation mobility chapter. In this section, we address motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and public transportation along the corridor. All these aspects are kind of intertwined on this one specific road. So a lot of the issues that we're trying to address are broken out into key kind of categories or sections. The first issue that we wanted to address was the traffic flow and circulation pattern along the corridor. We took a look at some of the issues that needed to be addressed for traffic, truck traffic along the corridor, provided some recommendations. Some of the turn lanes and medians need to either be updated or upgraded. Some of them actually need to have a median installed. So those recommendations are included here, what those should be. We talk about curb cut consolidation and cross access, so reducing curb cuts where possible, providing cross access where necessary, and then how new development should address potential traffic impacts along the corridor if they need to have less access points, things like that. This just identifies what all those different recommendations we're trying to talk about, puts them on a map. We show like potential signalized intersections or cross access, things like that. The pedestrian and bike improvements, is really more about the sidewalk network, the intersections and crosswalks, and the bike route connections. The sidewalk network is broken into a couple different categories. We'll talk about that in the streetscape section, as well as the intersection and crosswalks. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in the streetscape portion. Bike routes, although not completely appropriate for the corridor, connections that are being made across the corridor were important, so that's why it's talked about in this section. And then we show where some of those connections could happen. You can see it down on the south side, as well as some of the connections into the surrounding neighborhood. Public transit, not a lot to say other than you want to make some improvements to the PACE bus services that are along the way. You could also connect to the existing Elmhurst metro station as well as Bensonville just because of the regional location. And then we just talk about that on the map. Stormwater management, this one was a big issue throughout the public outreach process and dealing with a lot of the plans that we reviewed in the city. Some of the approaches that we talked about were increasing the permeability throughout the entire corridor, instituting green infrastructure, policies, incentives for any development that happens, and incorporating landscape-based stormwater strategies. So this stuff gets a little bit more technical, but essentially the purpose is to reduce the amount of water that's impacting the roadway and surrounding developments, including some of the neighborhoods. This section provides specific strategies and applications that all of those recommendations are trying to address and how they can be incorporated into the overall site. Streetscape and urban design plan. So this section starts to provide all the different recommendations for the streetscape, both improvements, enhancements, making it aesthetically more pleasing. Talk about the interchange beautification. There's a lot that can be done in this area. The I-290 bridge enhancements, there's a visualization that shows what some of the facade improvements could look like, incorporating a different sidewalk, things like that. The gateways and wayfinding, just kind of building these up, making them a little bit bigger, making them more prominent on the corridor, providing areas, and we identified this on the map earlier, where prominent intersections should be improved or built up, made it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, making sure people know more about the pedestrians that are walking the corridor. This is an example of what potential median improvements could look like along the corridor, dropping it down, putting it within the context of the corridor a little bit more, and the crosswalks that are kind of reflecting the types of traffic that the road's experiencing right now. These are the two sidewalk options that we had mentioned in the transportation section. There's two options based on the available space for a sidewalk. There's a carriage walk, which is a tighter configuration, and a parkway walk, which would allow for some lawn space between the sidewalk and the road. Both of them are great options. They both visually look very nice, and they can be kind of intertwined throughout the entire corridor. We provide recommendations for street lighting that are more consistent with the city standards. We provide recommendations for pedestrian amenities and landscape features that are happening throughout the community. Recommendations for public arts. The potential to remove some of the overhead utility wires. Obviously a very expensive effort, but something that can drastically change how that corridor looks. We provide recommendations for landscaping and screening, and more importantly, maintenance and operational considerations. You can recommend all the landscaping you want, but if you don't have something in place that helps make sure it looks the way it should look, it really wasn't worth the effort that you put into it. The last chapter is economic development implementation. This section just starts to bring together all the different recommendations and helps the city kind of align their efforts. It talks about cooperation with surrounding municipalities, public agencies, government agencies, service providers, businesses, property owners, all these different components coming together. What does the city need to prioritize? What are their next steps? Talks about reviewing some of the zoning and development controls that are already in place and aligning them with some of the regulations that we have in this plan. You need to continually be updating not just this plan, but some of your other plans. That recommendations that are in here are starting to impact or change. And then just over time thinking about priority or property acquisition and developer solicitation. This is just a summary of the market analysis. At the end of this document in the appendix is a full version of the market analysis that we had done for the initial phase of this plan. And then this just highlights some of the key funding sources the city should really be paying attention to or researching to get a better understanding of how they could apply monies throughout the planning process or growth of the corridor. Some of them are facade improvement programs, a TIF, which you already have in place, restaurant assistant programs, just things like that. So things that the city should be considering as they start moving forward. The last portion, really significant portion of this plan, is the implementation action agenda. As you can see, there's quite a few in here. I won't read any of them, but just so you get an idea, it'll start talking about, we provide recommendations for streetscape enhancement, one of the first checklists in this talks about how the first thing you need to do is develop a substantial streetscape plan for the entire corridor. So that would be like a step one, ease of implementation of B or A, but a level of prioritization of 1. So all the recommendations that are in this entire plan are kind of summarized in these implementation strategies. They're given a potential partner, ease of implementation, and a level of priority. So I won't read them. There's quite a few. And then the last piece is just the appendix. It overviews the demographics and market analysis for the entire corridor. It was the basis for a lot of the recommendations that we're making. It's all within context of reality, things like that. So with that, I can take any questions. I know that was really quick, but it was just kind of giving you a brief understanding of the purpose of the plan.
Any initial questions? Alderman Polumsky.
Thanks, Mayor. Comments and questions. I think this plan strengthens our commitment to investing in the North Side redevelopment. And I want to thank House of Levine and staff and everybody who came out to our workshops to provide feedback, and also anybody who contributed to our online portal. Overall, I think it's a fantastic plan. I think there are two main themes that were touched on that maybe weren't conveyed tonight, and one is this plan acknowledges that there's a physical barrier to the North Side, but a psychological one too. Some people think, oh, it's so far away, or it's up there. So I appreciate that the plan acknowledges those and makes recommendations to help bring people up north. And the other piece is based on a lot of the feedback, and a lot of people have said they are asking for a lot of city intervention. So I think people appreciate this plan, and that they're asking for us to be closely involved with the development on an ongoing basis. And while I think it's a fantastic plan, there's still an area of concern, and I don't know if you can scroll back to the place that shows the 3 areas.
The map, Alderman Polumsky?
Map that divides it into the 3 segments. Right, that's great. Thank you. So taking a look at this, in the North Zone, there is an area on the east side of York that has pretty narrow lots. And I know the plan is calling for like a commercial, a community shopping area. And I think we just need to make sure that over time, we're willing to revisit that as we're starting to learn that some smaller retail outlets may or may not be able to compete with online shopping, and maybe there's an opportunity for office suites or some other type of use there. So, but I think as you've reiterated over and over, this is a plan, and it shouldn't stop other opportunities for development as they present themselves, and that this is more of a guide, and I really appreciate it. It's very comprehensive, so thank you.
2 points that I'd like to address based on the comments. One thing I didn't say is the outreach for this project was really unlike very many projects I've ever worked on. I know that our firms worked on. We had great input from the community. It was repetitive in a way that was good. Like, we were always hearing the same comments from people. People were on the same page. I think to the best that we could, we incorporated very many, if not all, of the comments that we could into this plan. And I think the other part of that is sometimes those are kind of conflicting ideas, and that's why it's important that the plan remain very flexible where it needs to be or where it can be. That's the way it's written. It allows the city that kind of flexibility in the future. And it's a plan that kind of identifies the next steps that the city needs to take. So there are other plans from here that need to be undertaken.
Alderman Levin.
I just wanted to point out that we did go through it like the Evelyn Wood version very quickly here, but the plan is on the website under quick links. There's the North York plan under project documents, and Alderman Polumsky was on one of the members of the committee, as was Alderman Dunn, but our committee reviewed it and spent a lot of time looking at it. And it is a very well-written document, and I think it's a very exciting document. And so for the community members who couldn't follow through kind of quickly, it's about 75 pages. It is on the website, and it's worth a look.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Bram?
Thank you. Excuse me. I guess just one question in regards to, this is the first time, at least in my tenure, that there was online comments taken for input on this plan. How did that impact the number and the type of comments that were provided? And then how was it balanced between, I guess, resident comments and then property/business owner comments, and how were those integrated into the plan?
So the way the summaries are conducted, they are broken out into those two categories to begin with, because that can tend to be an issue. So there's residential questionnaires and then business owner or business property owners type questionnaires. Each were getting different questions, but similar to the questions that we were asking in the public meetings. So that input got tied right into any of the input that we were receiving at our public meetings. But we know what came from residents and what came from business owners to the most that we can by which ones that they picked. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No. No, the question was, I guess, when you have competing responses on probably the same topic in the plan, being one coming from business owners or property owners and then others coming from residential, how did that get incorporated into the plan overall? Did that just mean that the plan stated it as loosely as possible, or depending on your guys' experience, it was incorporated what your experience said versus business versus resident?
Yeah, and I think, so to answer your question, yes. What we would do is, if we receive comments that are conflicting, and that happens quite a bit, you know, the residents feel one way and the business owners feel another way about a specific issue. You know, we took that into consideration. We used our information gathered from the city, you know, the past plans, what the perspective has been in the past, and then also just our professional experience. So what we've done in other communities, what we've seen other communities do, and from there tried to find a compromise. And like many of these issues, you got to find a compromise or a middle ground where both parties will eventually see some kind of benefit from it. So the best that we could, I would say it always came down to our professional expertise. That was kind of more of a tiebreaker. So.
Excellent response, and that's what I was hoping to hear. I would also, I guess, reiterate to a certain degree Alderman Polomsky's comments about the plan. I'm happy to see it at this point in the process. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to see development happening on North York, the corridor. My only other question would be logistically, and maybe this is more city staff or committee even, logistically, what is the next step in the process here? This is a draft plan. This is a presentation of the draft plan. Will we as a council have an opportunity to discuss this and vote on that and make any recommendations? What's the next plans for the plan itself? And then going forward, walking down the various checklists, if you will.
As noted, it's a draft, and this is the first presentation and a lot of information. The hope is that council members will provide feedback, whether it's tonight or I know staff has said they'll sit down individually and walk through the plan at aldermen's schedules, and ultimately take in all of that and make any necessary changes, and then potentially come back to city council with any additional changes in a future presentation. Anything to add to that, City Manager Grabowski?
No, I think you summarized it well, Mayor. Thank you.
Is there an approximate time frame? Are we talking in the next?
I think we were hoping in
month
the
or
next
quarter?
the next 2 to 3 weeks. We were hoping to get feedback. I know we got the holidays, so maybe it's in the next month. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, just a quick question. I know Housel Levine has done many corridor plans in the past. This one happens to be one of the more recent. Were there any significant findings that were different and unique to this particular corridor in Elmhurst versus the other ones that you've done in the past? I'd be interested to hear if there were any unique characteristics about this particular corridor.
Yeah, I mean, I think this graphic was one of the most unique aspects of the corridor plan, and I really don't see this happen very often. Not that interchanges don't happen, but that it could be a positive if treated well and incorporated into the future, you know, growth or development of the corridor. So, you know, being this close to the downtown, but not trying to fight with it and steal, you know, any kind of uses or development from it, but kind of build off of it in the way that it can, be more audio-oriented, things like that. Some of those challenges kind of prove to be a unique aspect to a corridor plan, but in a good way. I think this corridor is really set up well to start getting the kind of interest or investment that it wants, as long as it starts to kind of set the tone for what its expectations are. So that was one of the big ones. The stormwater issues were significant. A big reason why we had CDF on our team to begin with. They know the corridor really well. They know the issues really well. They brought a real level of detail and specificity to the plan that we found very helpful. So hopefully you do as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I will add,
Assistant Manager Cobb.
Mr. Kopp?
I'll just take like 30 seconds real quick. First, I want to thank the community for their input. I think Nick said it well. The input was fantastic. But secondly, I want to thank Kevin Leidy, who was the point person on the staff side that really did a good job in this. He's our intern. He's going to be leaving us here in the next couple of weeks to take his first full-time job with the village of Schaumburg. And so I wanted to thank him for his everything he did to get this plan where it is today.
Okay, and that cuts my speech in half. Thank you, Mr. Kopp. I want to thank, I don't want to say surprised, but I know that we had a very, very active Elmhurst resident group that came out whenever we had our public meetings, and it was just fantastic. So I want to thank the public for getting involved. It really shows that they care about what's going on. Specifically, I'd like to thank the steering committee members who put in the extra effort, Mark Sabatino, Barb Risky, Trish Hall, Robert Platt, Rich Rosenberg, Susan Rose, John McCormick, Jeff Budgel, Danny Polumsky, Bob Dunn, Joe Mushout, Brendan Hill, and Susan McCoy, in addition to the Zoning and Planning Commission that also participated greatly in all of this. So I want to thank everybody for their hard work. It's a great draft. I think we're very close. Hopefully we'll have something wrapped up in the next month. Mr. Davis, thank you for your participation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Is that me? Agenda item 4, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody who has any written communications that they wish to submit? Please raise your hand. There she is, Ms. Jordan. Anybody else? Please approach. Watch your step there. Okay. Can we turn the camera on? Okay, any other written communications? I gotta make sure she's, there we go. On to agenda item 5, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council on any topic they choose. We ask that you, out of respect for the work that we have to get here done this evening, and also for other folks that may want to speak, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. We ask that you direct all your comments to the chair, and if you go over 3 minutes, I'll give you a gentle reminder, ask you to wrap it up. At this time, Clerk Spencer, is there anybody who has signed up to speak this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have, and I'll start with Kathy Jordan, 556 Fairfield.
Ms. Jordan, your name and address is optional.
Kathy Jordan, 556 Fairfield. Good evening. On February 12, 2008, a cooperation agreement between the City of Elmhurst and the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation was signed and formulated. It stated the foundation is charged with the responsibility to support the Elmhurst Historical Museum, a department of the city, with fostering awareness of and public advocacy for the museum. It is with that charge and our mission to educate, advocate, and fundraise for the museum that I come to you tonight on behalf of the Heritage Foundation. The Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is a working board that not only has a working relationship with the museum, but we have an ongoing partnership. The foundation was established to act as a ways and means for citizens to donate funds, providing revenue to enhance the museum and receive the benefit of a tax deduction. On November 25th, a special meeting of the Board of Directors was convened for the purpose of reviewing and discussing the recent City Council actions of 11/17/2014. The quorum of the Board of Directors, 14, was present, and with 3 Board of Directors absent. A motion was unanimously passed to present to the City Council the following letter. Dear Elmhurst City Council and Mayor, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation Board of Directors is extremely disappointed with the City Council's temporary reduction of the museum budget and the unusual approach to the budget process as it has been applied to the museum. The Foundation Board of Directors strongly supports the leadership provided by the current Executive Director, Brian Berghager. The Foundation Board of Directors supports staff and will continue to work with staff to complete the strategic plan. We are planning for a new exhibit opening, by all accounts, The Story of Elmhurst, on February 28, 2015. We will also continue to move forward by focusing on the work and mission of the foundation to stimulate broad-based support for local history through advocacy, education, fundraising, and the Elmhurst Historical Museum and Churchville House for our town, our history, and our heritage. Sincerely, Kathy Jordan, President, Michael LaCicero, Vice President, Rich Riker, Treasurer, Jenny Berg, Secretary, Ellen Braun, John DeVries, Janet Hodge, Randy Irion, Cheryl Kopecki, Jan Milano, Joe Morris, Margaret Fran Pruiter, Kathy Siegert, Joyce Sloan, Val Stewart, and Elzada Tipton. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. Generally, you have a review of anything that goes on, movies, TV programs. Well, we'll get a little review of the city council. I got a parking garage, $16 million worth of it, going up with no bid contracts. I'll remind the council that we had a force main and a concrete tank going in for storage, and that went from 6 to 10 that we know about. So we'll see if any of these contracts are really worth what the council says they are, because we got no comparison to make. And then what we did is we had a TIF, goes all the way down York. Wonderful, isn't it? The one in downtown, that's going to disappear shortly. Well, what you've done is you sold it to the people by saying, this TIF is going to be wonderful. You won't get any benefit from the taxes because they're going to stay there for development, but you get the sales tax. Unfortunately, the council had to change your heart. If you're in the TIF, you can share the sales tax. And boy, have you passed it out. Wonderful, ain't it? Tell the public one thing, then do something else because you want to develop it. Just great. So my taxes, I've been informed this year, I'm going to get tax break. You're going to pay the general obligation bonds. Well, you had an alderman trying for 2 or 3 years to get you to pay the general obligation bonds, and there was always a reason not to. But you're going to do it this year. I'm going to get 27. Oh, that changed. Reporters say 23. But I'm going to get an increase in water bill, increase in sewage bill. Fees are going to go up. Permits are going to go up. Rubbish contract is coming up in January. That's going up. So I guess I really better get that $23 out of you guys real quick. I informed the council at one time that income of the average working guy hasn't gone up for 8 or 9 years.
Ms. Pragash, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments, please.
And right now, what exists for those on Social Security is they're going to get 1.7%, maybe. So let's stop kidding the public. You just took out the greatest hunk of property in this town, and you're giving away the tax dollars too.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine.
Kathleen Sullivan. It's year end, so I thought we should recognize the fact that this year the city council has made probably the most progress in any of the years I've been coming with regards to stormwater. So that's great. We still don't have any shovel-ready projects, so keep working on it. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the plan that was just presented. I did notice that we listed an Elmhurst resident who's actually, someone is an Elmhurst resident who's actually a member of the Zoning and Planning Commission, and we should probably use their title correctly. Additionally, I liked the parts about the stormwater and encourage you not to skimp on that one bit. And then with regards to Wilder Crossing, which is on your agenda, I don't know how it got through the zoning commission or through the committee, but the two sides of the building, the north and the south side, are, if not on the property line, very close to the property line. And so, although the current buildings don't abut that, I think that the way you're building the downtown should allow for that. And they have windows and residents that would be on those sides, and so I see that there's a safety aspect to that that wasn't discussed or addressed at any of these other things, and I think that you should. Thank you.
That's all who signed in for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody who did not have an opportunity to sign up in our sign-in sheet that wishes to address the council at this time? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on. Announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to announce that tomorrow night, Alderman York and myself, along with several members of city staff and residents from the 4th Ward, are holding a meeting. It's open to the public here at City Hall at 7:30 p.m. It was a request by a number of residents who live near the Golden Meadows Park District property that is proposed for a potential detention basin, to answer some of their specific questions and anyone else who has questions about that project. And so that's tomorrow night, December 16th at 7:30 here at City Hall.
Okay, any other announcements?
I guess.
Clerk Spencer.
I just wanted to announce that today was the first day to file petitions for the 7 aldermanic seats that will be open for the consolidated April 7th election, and the last day to file, if anyone hasn't done so, is December 22nd. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. At this time, is there any council member that wishes to have any item removed from the consent agenda to vote no or add comment? Alderman Gutenkopf.
7.10.
7.10. Anything else? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. A motion to approve the consent agenda, minus item 7.1. Motion by Alderman Deuter.
She said 7.0.
7.10. I stand corrected. Motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 7.10. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Dunn. Clerk Spencer.
Deuter. Aye. Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Braham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes. Consent agenda is approved minus item 7.10. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation. It is a report.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the applicant's request for conditional use and associated variations. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed by Scott N. Levin, Chairman, Danny Polumsky, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner, Alderman, 7th Ward.
Okay, to put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Polumsky. Alderman Levin, this is a report out of your committee.
Thank you. This is a report that comes from the Zoning and Planning Commission. It's one that was, I think, somewhat high profile in terms of the fact that it's a condominium development going on Addison Street. It came out of the Zoning and Planning Commission, I believe unanimous or perhaps one dissent. The committee reviewed it and approved it. Unless there's certain specific questions, I think the report's extensive and speaks for itself.
Alderman Gutenkopf, you pulled this report.
I did pull this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the prediction I had when we approved the Han Street project has really started to manifest itself. We start to see only 6-story buildings recommended in downtown, along with the very extensive conditional use and variance process that these buildings have to go through in order to get approved. They seem to be taller and much more dense than what our downtown plan calls for, what we have as a community agreed is appropriate for our downtown. And this particular building has a design solution that was mentioned in the public comment that I'm uncomfortable with, the sort of horseshoe shape, or sorry, letter H shape the building takes. Assuming that in the future additional buildings will be built on the adjacent properties, will reduce the balcony areas to light well status, which I think is not in the best interest of the downtown overall, and will cause us to have all kinds of interesting conversations about proposed buildings on the adjacent lots. I just don't think that that particular resolution is in the best interest of our community. While I do agree with the parking, number of parking space variations, because I do think that that's pretty forward-thinking since this is so close to public transit, there are other things about this that I can't support.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe there is overwhelming consensus on this council and among residents that we want a healthy, vibrant downtown area. Through a combination of public investment and private activity, we are well positioned to provide a boost to downtown Elmhurst. One way to provide a boost is through higher density, transit-oriented residential developments. More people living downtown will increase the demand for downtown retail and services, which is great for existing businesses and will hopefully allow us to attract more unique restaurants and shops. Even with this goal, I don't think it's in the city's interest to approve the requested zoning relief for every downtown development that comes before it. Every exception to our zoning code warrants close scrutiny, and zoning relief should not be taken for granted. Our current downtown plan provides a lot of direction regarding redevelopment. The plan states that our city should encourage 2 to 4 story redevelopment, which is, quote, clearly compatible with the downtown environment, end quote. The plan also says that if the city considers structures taller than 3 stories, the use of upper story setbacks can help minimize the perceived mass and scale of new buildings. In addition to this guidance, the plan also acknowledges that, quote, somewhat taller buildings may be appropriate adjacent to major intersections or at other selected locations. I would argue that the Han Street development is one of the exception cases where a somewhat taller building makes sense. In my opinion, the height of the Han development is less objectionable because its large setbacks help minimize the mass and scale of the development. These setbacks work for the development because of the size of the assembled parcel. In the case of Wilder Crossing, the developer argues that the parcel is not large enough to accommodate the required setbacks and still receive a reasonable return. One problem is that even with the requested zoning relief, the property still is unable to yield a reasonable return, which is the justification for the developer's $1.2 million request for TIF assistance. The site is just too small to support this type of development. Our zoning should support feasible projects. I don't believe this development reflects good planning, and I'll be voting against the requested zoning relief.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Wilder Crossing is a development that I'm on the fence about from many different perspectives. Alderman Deuter actually mentioned a couple of the points that I was going to bring up, and one of those points is this really the highest and best use, and we've said that here on the dais many a times, for this location. Part of the arguments that have been utilized, I believe, in the by the Zoning Commission as well as by the committee, is along the lines of what is there today. The current building today is a legal non-conforming building, it's old, and you know, this would be a better use than that. Well, I can utilize that argument in any way, shape, or form. Anything better than that would probably be better because it's a new building compared to an old legal non-conforming building. The height as well is something that concerns me. Alderman Deuter just mentioned in comparison to Hahn Street. I do believe that Hahn is at least a little bit more palatable due to the setbacks that have been proposed and we're moving forward with. The number of variations here, the higher than 45 feet, the density, which, as Alderman Gutenkopf said, I actually don't have an issue with. But then you have the rear yard as well as the side yard and front yard variations as well being requested. To me, all those points come down to, is this the highest and best use for this property? I don't see that this is the highest and best use for this property. It seems like we're trying to shoehorn something in this development that shouldn't be there to try to get the maximum amount of profit possible. Alderman Deuter also pointed out the pending $1.2 million request for this development, which hasn't come before us yet. That concerns me, that we pretty much are the Wilder Crossing is asking for multiple variations to be able to, and this is the other argument by the Zoning and Planning Commission, to get a reasonable return. Well, I don't know what a reasonable return is. I've heard the percentage points of 10%, I believe, in the past. But if you need all of these variations, if you need various incentives from the city, I think that's a loud and clear message that this isn't the highest and best use. There are concerns, as one of the residents stated, of having all these variations. What would that do in regards to safety perspective? And maybe the committee would like to speak to that if they discuss that. But this just doesn't seem to add up to be the highest and best use overall for this piece of property. Maybe it's the case where many additional properties need to be consolidated compared to these two lots. Maybe that is the case to have the highest and best use. But we need to remember that, you know, as we move forward with these type of decisions, Hahn Street, Wilder Crossing, that this is not a 5-year decision. This is many a decade's decision that we're all going to have to live with. If there are any concerns with safety, if there are all these needs by Wilder Crossing, being all these variation requests as well as dollars, to me that just says it's not the highest and best use and we should look for something else in this location. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman, anybody who has not had an opportunity to speak yet? Alderman Levin.
Well, I just wanted to point out that the committee did ask questions about safety, and particularly fire safety. There are 2 entrances to each unit, so it's completely in compliance with the fire code. In terms of highest and best use, I don't know that that's one of the factors personally, and I think the committee agreed that this is exactly what is good for downtown. I can understand issues, disagreements in terms of bulk or height, but having looked at the loss of the hospital and talking to merchants about the decrease in purchase or customers, it's a very good use. It's across the street from other residential, multifamily housing. It brings some additional people downtown. It's got retail on the first floor, so to me that is the highest and best use. I understand the other concerns in terms of, you know, maybe I'm not saying I agree with them. I understand concerns about the other variances granted, but I don't see it as being a question of highest and best use. I think this is the highest.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll. Call the
Levin.
vote. Sorry.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mullenner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
No.
Deuter.
No.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
11 ayes, 3 nays.
11 ayes, 3 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 7.10 is approved. On to committee reports. 8.1, this is Clerk Spencer. I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the change order from Martin Cement Company in the total amount of $35,000 and the change order from Illini Precast in the total amount of $92,000 be accepted, and the city attorney be authorized to prepare a resolution revising the contracts with Martin Cement Company and Illini Precast. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Michael J. Bram, and Diane Gutenkopf.
To put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Healy. Alderman Kennedy, this is a report out of your committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is about the Addison parking deck and underground detention. This is a structure obviously being built, but it isn't one that requires a stormwater provision by our code, but because we know it's important, we are adding it into the construction of this building. And it's going to have a 1/2 acre foot of storage, which is actually 2 times the 1% storm. So 2 times the 100-year event. So this is a pretty significant amount of water that we'll be storing in this area. The reason for the change order is, if we go back in time, we had a we talked about a report, I think 4 weeks ago, related to the foundation change. And based on the change in the foundation design was really what predicates this report. And there were 2 options. Bless you, Dan. There was the storm trap, which is what's talked about. That was $212,000 based on the original design. But because of the change in the foundation design, we can go with a more economical design, $127,000, or a net difference of $85,000 to the positive. So since we've already qualified Martin Cement as our cement contractor, and with that redesign, it's simply with working with the precast guys, Illini, a change order to go ahead and do this, and thus the reason this report is here. And because this was a little different than what was originally planned, as a committee, we decided we wanted to, talk about this outside of the consent agenda and in the report section. So, if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? I think there was, Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple additional points to what Chairman Kennedy mentioned. First, that overall, the committee felt strongly that we needed to continue to lead by example and to hold ourselves to the same standards that we're holding either individual home builders to or individual home remodelers to. So when Chairman Kennedy referenced the 2 times the 100-year event, we know that because we asked staff to run this piece of property through the NRCS formula that we hold new home construction or remodel to. So we know that it's twice the amount of a 100-year event. So it's pretty strong. And I think it's fair to say that our committee and this council will continue to look at every avenue to mitigate stormwater whenever possible. And in this case, we're going above and beyond, and we're putting basically $120,000 into that effort. Lastly, I just want to mention that this specific piece of property sits or contributes to the same storm sewer system that we took action on, I believe, at the last meeting, where we identified, working with the county, what we refer to as the tree streets, the maple and the larch and the elm and the Dutch and all those other guys, that the same area that has that storm issue that that the county's helping us mitigate with, this piece of property is in that, contributes to that sewer, that storm sewer. So by holding this water from this piece of property over time and discharging it over time, we're also helping that same area. So we felt that was important and helped us, really justify spending that extra money is because this particular project will help mitigate a known problem in town. So I know for myself, and I believe for the committee, we feel very good about what we're doing at the Aston Street deck specific to stormwater detention. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had questions from residents about why we are not building this underground detention in a different way, and if I may, I'd like to just address that very briefly. Because the parking deck is made of precast materials, the foundation design depends on the overall design of the precast and is dictated by the precast company. Our initial plan was to sink piers and put this on foundations. The way the site's configured, as we heard in an earlier report, prohibited that. So we're going with our concrete contractor who is pouring a slab foundation, and as sort of luck happens, 2 of the walls of this underground detention are going to be part of the foundation we are building now. That made it more possible for us to look at having that same contractor pour 2 more walls and square off the box, if you will, which will now become the underground detention, rather than using the company that would have essentially built us an underground detention basin and assembled it on this site. So we're saving significant money as a result of these design changes to the project. And in the long run, we'll also save some money in the maintenance of the underground vault. The poured-in-place vault will have fewer seams that need regular upkeep than the sort of assembly set of the precast pieces that would have been built underground.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for the committee? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes. Agenda item 8.1 is approved. On to agenda item 8.2, which is a report out of the Public Works and Building Committee. I would ask Clerk Spencer to please read the recommendation.
Finance Committee.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure.
And I got the wrong report.
2015 water rate and sewer rate review.
I think you're right on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is
There it is.
therefore, you want me to read it?
I got it now.
Okay. It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare an amendment to the municipal code ordinances changing the water rate, sewer rate, and capital investment recovery charges as outlined above, effective for usage billed on or after January 5th, 2015. The FCAAS Committee further recommends that the city attorney prepare an amendment to the municipal code of ordinances to include both cubic meter rates and per 1,000-gallon rates for fiscal year 2015 as outlined above. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, Marty Deuter, and Noel P. Toledo.
Okay, to put this fine report from the Finance Committee before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve report and recommendation as read. Alderman York with a motion, Alderman Dunn with a second. Alderman York, this is your report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to thank city staff and the committee for their hard work on this report. We spent quite a bit of time on it in committee, and I think came out with a great solution. Our city has a municipal utility fund that collects revenues to pay for all the expenses related to the production and delivery of water, as well as sewer services. And so therefore, it requires that we review these rates, and it's entirely independent of tax levies because it's based on actual costs. We looked at a number of things as we went through this, but most everything that's highlighted in our report is pretty much right out of the water and sewer rate study that we had done and reviewed in 2013, and council will recall that you adopted these strategies. As far as the different components are concerned, briefly, and I didn't have any inquiries from any city council members, so I'm assuming everybody understands this very well-written report by Marilyn Gaston. But this is the last year that we know of that we're going to be hit with what we call a major rate increase in our water commodity. And we basically, on January 1st, the meters will be readjusted and we'll be paying 18% more for water than we did on December 31st. And the water usage is about 50% of the water costs. The other thing in the water side we're doing is we've got a 5-year plan to replace all the meters in the city, and those meters will meter in thousands of gallons versus cubic meters currently. We are going to actually take on a little bit of debt to facilitate that. They're long-term assets, so we felt as a committee that that was the appropriate way to handle that, and this is probably only the second time in the city of Elmhurst history that we've actually financed capital assets on the water side. So, but we think it's a very good way to do this. As far as the sewer system is concerned, the sewer rates remain relatively constant. We have an ever-increasing debt service there with long-term capital replacements at the water treatment plant, and that's the reason that we created the CERC, as we call it, was to deal with those costs on a fair basis per meter, per water meter, not on volume of water consumed, because there are things that have to be done regardless of how much water actually goes through the mains. Finally, one thing that internally we looked at was the cash balances in the funds to get them up to a level where we can feel comfortable that we have cash to operate the system in the event of an emergency. I think we've had a couple drains on those, especially last winter, where we had just a huge number of water main breaks, and we had a lot of water that went unbilled, plus the cost to fix those breaks. As well as we had a number of frozen water services too. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 of those that we had to repair too. So those are kind of one-time things that we don't normally see, but increase the demands on the cash in our system. And then also, due to waiting for the water rate report last year, we actually didn't bill enough for the first about 3 months of water service last year, as we were trying to get all these factors put together and get a rate determination made. So the news at the end of the day is that there is an increase, and it's necessitated by the costs that go to delivering those services, and that really is about as sweet and as simple as you can make it. We're very conscious of every dollar having an effect on users of the system, but by the same token, we can't put the system in peril by not doing the proper repairs and updates. The other update, that a very costly one that we talked about, was water main replacement, stepping up the water main replacement by about $1.5 million per year over the next 5 years. So obviously that's got to be paid for somewhere. So it does result in a rate increase, but we believe as a committee it's warranted, and we will review this every year and do the best we can to keep the rates as low as they can possibly be. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Okay. Questions or comments? Alderman Dunn?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple follow-ups to Chairman York's comments. And the bottom line is the overall rate will be going up 10.8% this year. 12% of that is due to the water, the increase on the water side, which is in most part driven by the increase in water, and then 8% on the sewer side. We will see a slight increase on the CERC. Just wanted to, city staff put together an assessment of how we compared to other communities in terms of water bills, and We are, on the water side, we're actually slightly below average, which is commendable. And on the sewer or the wastewater utility side, we're slightly above average. And a lot of that's due to the age of the Elmhurst infrastructure. We're benchmarking off of towns similar to ours, like Lombard, Glen Ellen, who have water bills higher than us. But then when we look at newer communities such as Bolingbrook or Carroll Stream Plainfield, those a little further west with newer infrastructure, they tend to see a little bit lower water bill than us. But we will, to echo Chairman York's comments, we will continue to look at each and every expenditure at the wastewater utility, wastewater treatment plant, and in the overall infrastructure in general, and continue to remain competitive and in a financially healthy situation for our wastewater, our water utility fund. Thank you.
Alderman Braham?
Thank you. In regards to the increase, I know this is always hard to do when you talk about any type of increase, if it's talking about the tax levy or water and sewer, et cetera. The report went into the great detail, and I appreciate that of the committee. And the committee could correct me if my assumptions are wrong here, but I just want to make sure I understand everything in the report. The water side increase, the operating, not what we're handed down from DWC, the increase that we are actually implementing, the 7.2%, I believe the rationale behind that is to replace all the water meters, as Alderman York said, and the additional issues that we've had with water mains breaking throughout these past couple hard winters and et cetera. But my biggest question is, on the sewer side, the 8%, is the reason for the 8% increase from 5.37 per thousand gallons to 5.8? Is the reason because of our budget in that area is below what we would, our cash balance is below that we would like for it to be, or is there any other projects that are on top of that for the sewer side of it?
Sure.
Yes, it's a combination of both of them. So a certain amount of the rate increase, when we first looked at this, we went back to city staff and asked them to take a 10-year approach at looking at what the rates need to do to get the cash balance to where it needs to be. And again, is a similar approach to the general fund of the city. We didn't want to we didn't feel like it would really make a lot of sense to raise the rates this year and next year to get that whole cash balance in there in 2 years, but we take a more longer term look at it because the city is in decent financial shape. If there were a big emergency, we have the funds elsewhere that we could loan to the municipal utility fund to make any repairs that are needed. And so the cash balances were a big part of it, but also just operating costs as well.
But no specific projects, just overall operating costs?
Just overall operating costs. We have a lot of the long-term costs are built into the CERC, so that's increasing as well, but we've had to get debt on some of the big projects that we're doing at the sewer treatment plant, but yes, just overall costs.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the vote.
York?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye.
Leader?
Aye.
Palumski?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Paludo?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Healy?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Gutenkopf?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Report 8.1 out of finance passes. On to reports and recommendations. I'll try to make this quick. I want to thank a lot of folks. Last Saturday was officially Peyton O'Brien Day here in the city of Elmhurst. I want to thank, it was Peyton O'Brien Day. We were fulfilling some wishes for a a young cancer patient here in Elmhurst, 6-year-old Peyton O'Brien. Ann Sullivan and everyone for Relay for Life, who was responsible for not only raising money, but really painting the gym purple. Chief Bassador and all of the Elmhurst Fire Department, we were able to make one of Peyton's wishes come true, which was to actually ride in a fire truck. And that was on his way to wish number 2, which was to watch his brothers play basketball at York High School. So he was picked up in a fire truck, went around town, blew the horn, waved to everybody, and then got to the gym and was part of the introduction. It was the York varsity versus Bennett, which was his initial request because his father actually went to Bennett, but he's got 2 brothers who plays at York. So I want to thank Ann Sullivan, the Relay for Life folks, Chief Bassador, and the Elmhurst Fire Department. Also, Athletic Director Wagner. Before the game, Peyton was escorted into both locker rooms where he got numerous signed basketballs from various professional players, the entire Bulls basketball team, and other folks of note, alumni from both groups. And ultimately, the fans as well just did a fantastic job. And Peyton was sworn in as an honorary fireman for the day and received his official helmet. So I heard back that he was absolutely exhausted after it was all done, but it was a great day, and I really appreciate really the city of Elmhurst rallying around this young man who is facing a tough fight, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family. And then the only other report from me is reminding council that the Addison parking deck, we're doing a groundbreaking this Friday at noon. Hope to see you all there. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. One update. On December 5th, we met with the Park District regarding the York Commons project. That was with city staff, some of the elected officials that are on the communications committee, and our consulting engineers. We talked back and forth over a number of issues. They asked for some additional information regarding York Commons and the cost to build certain improvements that we're looking for in the east lobe. So we're working on that information, and we will have it to the Park District in time for their January 14th meeting, where we hope they will discuss that and take it into consideration.
Okay. Any other reports or recommendations? Alderman Gutenkopf.
I wonder if we could have an update on Lucky Motors?
There's no update other than what the council knows that we discussed at a certain time. I'll be working with City Attorney Storino on filing some papers and approaching them on it.
Alderman Braham.
Thank you. This is a lingering request I made, I believe, 6 or 7 months ago about ComEd coming to present. The plan was to have ComEd present prior to the end of the year, and we're here at that point at the end of the year. I was wondering if I can get an update on when ComEd will present on some of the issues that I've brought up in the past, being their maintenance of right-of-ways in the city of Elmhurst. I think smart meters are now currently implemented. They weren't at the time of the request. And then other items like power outages, especially, it seems like we're seeing more and more on the north side as every year goes by.
ComEd's supposed to be here either the first or second meeting of January. We got just squeezed with a little bit of information and stuff we were going over this month. So first meeting, Jim?
We're trying to have them at the first meeting in January.
Any other questions? Okay, agenda item 10, ordinances. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the ordinance.
Okay, an ordinance for the levy and assessment of taxes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2014, and ending December 31, 20, I think that should say 15, of the city of Elmhurst, DuPage, and Cook counties. Am I right?
No,
correcting that? Am I right in correcting that, or I said it wrong?
It's 2014.
Okay. I thought I was, all right, January 1, 2014, and ending, oh, that's right, December 31, 2014. My mistake, I'm sorry.
Okay, this is an
Okay.
ordinance to pass our tax levy based on previous reports and discussions. I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Dunn. York, any conversation?
None, thank you.
Seeing none, anyone else? Any conversation as it relates to ordinance 53-214? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the vote.
York.
No.
Sorry. Was it Joyner that second? Oh,
Oh,
done.
Dunn.
Oh,
Word.
I, why would?
Aye.
Okay, oh. Okay. Leader,
Aye.
really messed this one up. Okay, Palumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Levin. Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Olener.
Yay.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 1 yo. 0 nays. Ordinance is approved. On to other business. Any other business? Alderman York.
Do we have meetings next week, Your Honor? Do we need to make an announcement about that? But
That's up to the individual committee members, committee chairman.
Okay.
Chairman York.
We're not meeting next week.
So noted. Alderman Bram.
Yes, I believe other business is the most appropriate spot to ask this question or make a point. The point is in regards to the currently City of Elmhurst parking lot on the west side of Addison. I know it's under committee discussion, so I don't want to dive down into the details there, and I won't. But the concern I have is the process more so than anything. I believe the first step of the process should be along the lines of the City Council as a whole, before talking about RFP or what should be contained in an RFP or anything along those lines. It should be decided on what we should be doing with that individual piece of property as a whole before, like I said, moving on to any other steps. So from a procedure standpoint, it seems, and that's why I haven't discussed this or brought this up as of yet, it seems to me that the committee is talking in a different direction. And I would like to make a request that we as a council should decide, the first recommendation should be on whether we should sell it or go RFP before we talk about an RFP.
Okay. Any other business? Seeing none, this is our last meeting of the year. I wish everyone happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. We may or may not have committee meetings next week, depending on the chairman, and we'll see you all next year. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. I got ahead of myself. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Deuter. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Just look at
We're adjourned.